is our first guest from a DSO, a corporate group. I'm quite excited about this one. I'm here with Charley Mitchell from Together Dental. I'll actually leave the introduction to yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me today. So I'm Charley Mitchell and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Together Dental.
Fantastic. Now, there's a lot to dive into about Charlie and his career, and the big one for me, and because you'll have seen from the other episodes, I always mention this. I come from a hospital pharmacy background myself. I like the fact that I can bring in new ideas into the industry, and offline we were talking about that as well. But you've had an extensive career in that world. Like, you've seen a lot of things. You've been in a lot of different areas of it. And I'm kind of wondering what made you make the move to dental, and what are some of the insights that you're already bringing or have been bringing out into Together Dental and dentistry as a whole.
Yeah. So I started my career in pharmacy. I did pharmacy for about 18 years and did multi-sector. So I did a lot of community pharmacy and some hospital pharmacy. I moved into the dental industry just over 2 years ago. And I got to the point in pharmacy where I felt that I'd reached the ceiling. I didn't feel like I could add more value into that industry. But what was really important to me was to stay within healthcare. I didn't know where in healthcare, but I wanted to stay in healthcare to ensure that I still got the appetite every day to make a difference. And what I mean by that is make a difference to the people that I work with. It's really important to me that we make a difference to patients. So healthcare for me was where I wanted to be. Dental was the opportunity that I got presented at that moment in time when I was looking to move. And I'm glad I took it. I've done it for 2 years now and I'm still learning. There's loads of things to learn. Lots of similarities within pharmacy, but I think there's a lot of things that dentistry can do over the next couple of years to get to where it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I share that sentiment because when I think about, myself being in marketing, it's sometimes hard to find a purpose within marketing, and actually, you know, anchoring that in healthcare has been like a really good point for me. And obviously in operational world, I can see those similarities. One thing about pharmacy and dentistry that I've noticed in my time is that there's a lot of regulatory pressure, especially now when we're seeing it more and more and more. Um, and that really relays into how we see patient care evolving as well. Um, what do you think some of the differences are, though? So we've got that in common,
Yeah.
but where do you see us sort of veering apart?
I think the biggest difference that I saw when I came into dentistry, yes, we pharmacy and dentistry still work within the NHS and there's lots of regulations around it. For me, the biggest surprise was access for patients. So in pharmacy, there was always those challenges around the contract and the funding of the contract, but patients always had access to us to get their medication and have those services. And in dentistry, it's slightly different. Not every patient's got that access. And for me, wanting to make a difference to patients, what I've been focused on over the last 2 years is how do we increase our capacity and access to patients to be able to see the dentist. So that's what I've been working on over the last 2 years. I think that's where the biggest difference between the two.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you see that in the hospital world, but even the GP world now, NHS app, on online booking, that kind of stuff. Um, you you feel that that's the way we need to go. It's almost table stakes at this point, but dentistry needs to catch up.
Absolutely. And I think the digital world with dentistry needs to catch up as well. The one thing that I say every single week when I'm out visiting practices and talking to clinicians is a pharmacy we had access to summary care records. So we could access patients' GP records, what medication they're on, what medical history is. In dentistry, we don't have that. But in dentistry, in our surgeries every single day, they're doing minor oral surgery, they're doing implants, they're doing the types of treatments that should have that level of access. And it's because digitally we're not at that level yet. And I think we're seeing the growth of AI, we're seeing the growth of technology that can support dentists in the treatment they have for patients. And that's really exciting for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about that journey that you're trying to take Together Dental on, and I think realistically you're kind of leading the charge in a lot of ways. You're a COO of this big group. What are the challenges around that, pushing that larger scale?
I think when you've got a group, we've got 36 practices. if we want to do something, we can't just flick a switch and put it into 36 sites straight away overnight. There's a lot of trial and error, and we've got to make sure it's the right thing for our business, our clinicians and our staff, but also our patients. So we go through a lot of trial phases. And for me, that's really important because I don't want to roll something out across the business and cause disruption, which ultimately disrupts clinicians and disrupts clinical care operations as well. So it takes us time to go on that change, but change is really important and we will get there with the right technology systems. Just got to go for it to be able to follow that.
Yeah, so it's about balancing that business excellence with clinical excellence.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really important.
And do you think that those kind of learnings can still be pushed onto, single site high streets, like, not just rushing to get the latest thing, but making sure that it fits well with what they're going to bring clinically to a patient?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a DSO, I know some of those smaller groups in the high streets look up to us to see what we're doing. But actually, it's really important that we look at what they're doing. If they've got the one site or two sites, they can be more agile and more innovative very quickly. They haven't got to implement a lot of change to be able to do that. So for me, it's really important. I go to all the dentistry shows and the ABG meetings and sort of discuss with other local dental providers what they're doing. I had a meeting a few weeks ago with a private dental group that got 5 practices, introduced something new into their group that is really interesting to me. And for me to do that in our group, it's going to take quite a bit of time and quite a lot of work clinically and operations wise to implement. I think it's the right thing to do. And finding a smaller group that's already done it, I can learn from them. So we mentioned outside that we will look to the DSOs to see what they're doing. I think we can learn so much more from the smaller groups as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about just you giving back, but you getting something in return. And I quite like that in dentistry. There's a lot of camaraderie. I think obviously your high street dentist, if there's 2 on one high street, there's going to be some rivalry. But I think altogether it's quite a camaraderie based industry.
Yeah, I think in dentistry they've got a shared vision, they've got a shared goal. They want to do what's best for the patient, and they want to improve the NHS contract and access to patients, but they also want to give the best clinical care privately as well. Where in pharmacy, you had a couple of groups, and Lloyd's wouldn't talk to Boots, and Boots wouldn't talk to Superdrug, and they wouldn't help each other out because they're all the individual businesses. But in dentistry, you do refer that patient to that dentist down the road to have that implant if you can't offer it in-house because it's the right thing for the patient. And you build those relationships and those respect where you can trust that they don't steal that patient for the rest of the care. And I think that's what I really like about dentistry. We're constantly getting referrals into the group from practices around us that can't offer some of the sort of the higher end treatments, like your all on fours or your zygomatic implants. But there's stuff that we can't offer that we send back to them. So I really like that about the dental industry and the way people work together. There is that camaraderie, like you say.
Yeah, real connection.
Yeah.
And we've spoken a bit about how you believe a good DSO or big group should run and how you should, take things at a pace that makes sense. But how do you ensure consistency? Like, how do you make sure we talked about going a bit slower, but what are some of the practices you put in place for making sure it's consistent across all locations?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I came in to the group, it was off the back of COVID, sort of coming out of the COVID element. And before that, they'd acquired quite a lot of individual practices. And we came into a group that had 34 sites doing 34 different things. So we had to create a ways of working across the group. What is the Together Dental way of working? We had practices that weren't branded as Together Dental. And again, if you're bringing a practice into the group, but you leave them as their old branding, their old processes, how can they feel part of that family? So for me, it was really important that one, we did the rebranding piece that every site was Together Dental. And then the next phase was every site works the same way consistently. So we created the ways of working. We had an operation structure that was able to go and set that up in each individual practice and follow it up. We had a clinical team, the clinical compliance team that supported that journey as well. And across the group, when you look at the different roles that we've got, we have about 16, 17 support people visiting practices every single day. So we all know what that sort of ways of working is, and we embed that every time we go into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really noticeable with TD because, I've actually been a patient of 3 different TD sites.
Oh, really?
I've gone from Billericay to Brentwood to Clacton now, and I have to say, other than the face I'm seeing, the experience I have is exactly the same. It's very consistent, and as always, clinical excellence is always great. So that's really cool to see that that's at the core of what you do as a DSO, and I think that a lot of people can learn from that. Even if they're just a two-site practice.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking about that consistency, obviously, I'm from Hemishine One. I'm going to be talking about technology.
Yeah, of course.
What do we think about centralized systems, cloud-based systems? Like, do they play a part in that consistency, and do they help you bring that to your different sites?
Yeah, I think the centralized systems and centralized systems like you've mentioned has more of an impact as a business rather than individual sites. So if I go back to what we've been doing recently with our IT function and putting everything on the cloud, so getting rid of the individual servers that we've got in sites and going to a cloud-based function, that gives us better security over the data that we're storing, makes us more secure as a business, and compliant, and it gives our head of IT peace of mind
Yeah.
that all of our data is secure and he's got access to it as and when he needs to. And if anything goes wrong, we've got the backups. We've had some instances where we've had some old processes in practice that have sort of broken as a result of a power cut. And we got really worried around that patient data and the scans that are on it. But actually, because we'd already backed it up to a central server, there was none of that risk for us. So for me, it is really important. It allows us to take away some of that legacy systems and processes. We've done some IT work in some of our other practices where we've been able to, the comms cabinet was the size of this room, and now it's in a small box like that because we've been able to introduce new technology and new systems and get rid of some of the legacy. Dentally has allowed us to have better visibility of what's going on in practice. From a central function, I can see where the white space is within our practices, where the high value treatments are coming from, what our revenue for that day is, how many UDAs we've submitted. It gives me more visibility over what our group of practices are doing and where we need to react as well.
Yeah, and that reporting kind of feature within all of those systems, I'm guessing that reduces a lot of headaches.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 2 years ago, we had no reporting. We had no business intelligence. We had no BI system. We've done that last year. We've introduced MPC, which is an add-on to Dentally, which gives myself, but my ops team, more data that will drive a better patient experience, but also drive more revenue into the practices. We have what we call an action today dashboard, which has got some clear KPIs that our reception teams and our registered managers in our practices look at on a daily basis and work through. It gives them something to do every single day rather than them having to filter through multiple reports trying to find which patient cancelled yesterday and hasn't rebooked, or which invoice has been unpaid, and what the availability is across the diary over the next couple of days. It's all in one platform, and it just makes things a lot easier. And just going through the data earlier on, since we introduced MPC, our reporting has gone its trajectory in the right way. So our white space is improving. Our cancellations or FTAs have started to reduce. Unpaid invoices are reducing. Our open course of treatments are reducing. So we're doing all that background tidy up, which makes our lives a lot easier within the practices.
Yeah, and it kind of proves if you get into the data, you dive deep into it, and some people it might be a bit nerdy, but actually has good outcomes.
Yeah, and I think again, you don't need to be nerdy to understand the data. The way it's been set out is all of my registered managers can look at it. It's red, amber, green. It flashes in your face what's wrong, what's good. And they clearly see what they've got to go after. You click on a tile and it tells you which patients. So even the staff members that we've got within the business that don't like data can clearly understand what their actions are and go and deliver it throughout the day.
That's great. It's great getting people involved like that. So I'm going to go back to a little bit to the pharmacy piece, but you have a lot of experience. I have this similar experience, probably not quite as much as you with these different systems. you've looked at systems like Compass, JAC, ARIA, Epic, all these different things across the different places that you've worked. How do you think the adoption of like these kind of big bang systems is in dentistry compared to in the pharmacy world?
I'd say with the likes of the systems that you mentioned there, it's similar to your dentalies here. So I do think there's been a big uptake. Um, I do feel that dentistry on a technology wavelength, AI and stuff like that, are a lot more advanced than pharmacy. I mean, I've been out of pharmacy for 2 years and AI has taken over in the last 2 years. So it may be slightly different now. But we weren't talking about AI technology in the way we do prescriptions. It was very manual. We did introduce automation in pharmacy where we had a lot of off-site dispensing hubs and removing a lot of the regular sort of monthly prescription workload out of the pharmacy, out the back door, to be done on a centralized hub and then brought back in. So that was ahead of its game. But I think in dentistry, they are taking up the AI technology. You've got Pearl for the x-rays. We've got chairside for the digital note taking. So records what you're saying in surgery, transcribes that. So I'd say we're much further ahead from what I've experienced in pharmacy. But I still think there's a lot more to do and there's a lot more we can go after to better improve the workload for clinicians and the practice teams, but also improve the outcomes for patients, get more preventative care so that we don't have these bigger treatments down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I share the sentiment as well in the pharmacy world. I left it 2 years ago as well, and the big thing at the time was barcode scanning.
Oh yeah,
So it was they have a while to go, but I definitely think there's things that we can learn from, especially like with the connecting of systems.
Yeah.
For sure. You spoke about AI, and so now I have to talk about it. um, do you do you think that there's a space for it? I think is the key thing. We've spoken to a few people now. Kunal from Tooth Club. It was very much maybe let's hold back, let's wait, and let's see how it goes. But Kunal from Meliora Dental in Leeds was like, no, let's go full steam ahead. Everyone needs it. We should be doing as much as we can. What are your kind of thoughts on it?
I think I'm in between the two.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely got us a space. We've used a couple of systems, like I mentioned, Pearl. That is a great tool for the clinicians to identify sort of caries and stuff for that on an X-ray, much better than your normal black and white. And for me, being out of dental, I look at an X-ray and it means nothing to me. When I talk to people outside of dentistry, I say your dental X-ray is similar to your baby scan. Someone shows you a baby scan, you're going, what am I looking at? Where Pearl puts colors on it. So if a baby scan had colors and showed an outline of the head and this is where the legs are, it makes it a much better visual for the patient. And I think that's what the AI technology within the X-ray world has done for us.
Yeah.
It allows us to physically show you as a patient, this is your tooth. This is where we've got the caries. This is where you might need a filling, or actually it's gone too far down. You're going to require a root canal. It makes that conversation a lot easier for the patients to understand, but you as a clinician to explain. We've also got chairside. Again, if you ask any dentist, one thing they dislike most about their job, it would be their notes. Right? The note taking, the amount of information they've got to put in after every single checkup and treatment is off the charts. And any way that we can compliantly, in a compliant way, reduce that workload for them, I think we should look at. And we have done. So we're trying it at 5 sites where our clinicians have got microphones. We've got their treatment templates uploaded into the system. So as they're talking through the patient like we are now, it's recording the whole conversation and then we'll automatically populate their template for them. But it also highlight if they've missed something. So if they haven't asked, are you a smoker? It will highlight that to the clinician so they can have that conversation before that consultation ends. And that's allowed us to look at our appointment times. So you may be booking patients in for 15 minutes at a time because you need 7 minutes for your notes. Yeah. Now you don't need 7 minutes for your notes. You've just got to sense check them and save it. So now we can go from a 15-minute appointment to maybe 10 minutes. And in that hour, you can see additional 2 patients. So it allows improved access for patients because we get to see more, but also for the clinicians, it allows them to improve their revenue per hour as well, which is also important to clinicians, but also to the business as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's AI voice notes is so interesting to me because if you can fit it into your workflow, if it's seamless in what you're doing, and you can give that clinician time to allow them to talk to the patients in a more human way, why not? I think that should be something we do. And I think I share your opinion, don't go full steam ahead, but think seriously about why we're doing it. And if you can make that use case, I think
Yeah.
it's a goer.
And I think with it as well, you need the likes of Kunal, who's all up for it to trial it, and you need the other Kunal, who's going to sort of be skeptical and challenge and really challenge the ideas around it and why you're using it and how it works. You need both sides of it to make sure it's the right system to then bring into the market. So I think both their points are really valid.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we've talked a lot about technology. And this next sort of topic I'm going to bring up is something that's hot on people's lips. I briefly mentioned it to you outside, but recruiting and retaining dental professionals, it's really tough at the moment. It's tough for your massive groups. It's tough for your single practices. Um, how has that challenge been for you guys, and or how do you see the challenge, and how do you see it like improving?
I think for me, when we talk about the biggest differences between pharmacy and dentistry, I've got to say the biggest difference when I came in was the multidisciplinary approach. So in pharmacy, we were very forward thinking in the use of technicians and accredited technicians. And in the dentistry world, your technicians are your hygienists, and you're actually checking technicians are your dental therapists. And when I came in and saw that we had this population of hygienists and dental therapists, we weren't utilizing them in the way that I was used to in pharmacy. So I did a lot of work when I first joined. I attended a lot of meetings, went to the ADG, a couple of therapist meetings and hygiene therapy meetings where they talk about the scope of practice and what they could bring into the dental practice and how that operations could be adapted to implement and include them in it, allowed me to really challenge our business in the way that we did that. And with the recruitment challenges that we had last year, this year's been fantastic for us. We've grown our NHS allocation and by 33%. We've been able to recruit double-digit FTE worth of NHS clinicians into our business by creating that multidisciplinary approach. So in April last year, they changed some of the guidance around dental therapists doing direct access treatments for NHS patients, which effectively means dental therapists can now see their own patients. The patient doesn't need to be referred by a dentist. So that was a big barrier before. And also the biggest barrier was the dental therapist prior to April would have to submit any claims under that dentist's performer number. So there was a massive reluctance to support dental therapists in their scope of practice. They've now got their own personal numbers, and that has been the biggest change for us this year in this last financial year. So 2024 moving into 2025, dental therapists being introduced into our practices, working with our dentists and clinicians, and creating that multidisciplinary approach and collaborative working has really just changed the game for us. Dentist recruitment into NHS has still remained really difficult. We've seen quite a lot move from the NHS into private, which I completely understand with the way that the contract is set up and the payment structure, and you read it every day and you see it on the news. The NHS dentists are doing some treatments at a loss because of the lab fees and stuff like that, and that's not sustainable. So you can't blame those NHS dentists moving over to the private world. But this has really allowed us to stabilize our NHS contracts, grow our NHS, and create a real stable patient base for us now to grow our private. Because I think you need that patient base in your practice to be able to then develop on the other services that you offer. So yeah, recruitment has been a challenge, but the one thing I would say to anyone that's having that challenge that hasn't looked at the multidisciplinary approach, look at introducing dental therapists, fully utilize your dental hygienist as well. Because if you look at their scope of practice, there's so much more that they can add to the value of your business.
Yeah. So change the mindset to to change the outcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really nice. And great thing about that is that it answered a lot more of my questions around that. So, no, that's really, really nice. And I think that is something that I noticed a lot in the pharmacy world. Obviously, technicians had a lot more, well, I wouldn't say power, but they had a lot more scope for work, which is really cool. And it's nice to see that at least someone's leading the charge in the dental
Yeah.
world.
And I think that there are others out there that are doing it. But for me, coming from pharmacy, that was the one big gap that I noticed that I thought we could fully utilize. And we've got a great population of people out there that want to be doing it, but are just not being allowed to or being empowered to. And a lot of those dental therapists are overseas dentists. They've been dentists in their own country for 10, 15 years and are going through the ORE training program over here, which is 2 years, could be free depending on when you get your exams. So they are very experienced clinicians that can support your patients and your practice in the short term. And you're supporting them through that journey. They then become a dentist when they complete their RE, and you've got other dentists in your business. So it's a longer plan for us as well, but we're creating that sort of conveyor belt of dental therapists, supporting them through ORE, creating the next generation of dentists to then support our growth.
Amazing, amazing. Um, I always like to ask people like what they see in the future for dentistry, and we've
Mhm.
spoke a lot about this, but specifically, I want to chat with you a little bit about in the next 5 years where you see dentistry going, but how do you see corporate dentistry, DSO groups helping to shape that future?
So it's a tough one really because I'm quite an optimist. So I do think that the NHS contract will be reformed, and I do think there'll be some positive changes. Will it happen in the next year? No. Will it happen in the next 5 years? Maybe not. I look at pharmacy and they've got similar challenges around their contract, and they're seeing some positive step changes. It's not as quick as I'd like to see it, and the industry would like to see it. And I see a lot of similarities within dentistry. So I'm quite optimistic that NHS has still got a part to play in being a successful business. And that's something that I'm going to continue to drive in my position within the group, that we don't give up NHS contracts to go private. I think I'm going to continue that journey. I think NHS has got a big part to play now, but in the next couple of years, with some of the powers that the ICBs have now got, I think they're going to reallocate funds to where it's being delivered and reward the contracts where it's being delivered and remove from where it's not. It's tough and it's challenging, but I think it's the right things to be doing to ensure that patients are able to be seen. But I do think that we're going to go to a more not subsidized care, but I think NHS has got its place, and I think private is going to continue to grow. I think educating patients on what they can get treatment wise privately. So you go and have your NHS appointment, you have a fill in, you get amalgam at the moment, it's great. Making sure patients are aware that for a fee, it can be white, because everyone wants their white teeth. Everyone's more aware now of amalgam. And you look at Europe, they're looking at banning it and things like that. So I think patients are becoming more aware, and we can educate them more to what is available and sort of get that balance right with NHS and private care. I think that's where we're going. And with regards to the DSOs, I think they are working really, really closely together in the industry. You look at the ADG members, we've got a meeting next week, but we are constantly talking about suppliers. So who do we use? Can we create an environment where we all work together to create the best experience for our groups, but also the suppliers that we're working with? And I think there's more that we can do to support those smaller individual sites as well, help them go on their journey. Because the bigger groups, the only way that they can grow is by acquiring those other practices. So if we can help them get on the journey, it allows us to be able to grow ourselves.
Absolutely. That's a great mindset. I think that having patients at the forefront of your care, even though you're one of the bigger businesses in the industry, I think it's quite admirable. That's really nice. I think that's a really good time. Actually, I always give this segment to everyone is to let you have your like, to give a plate to the industry, to highlight something, to really push a message home. And I think we're almost there with what you've been saying. But
Yeah.
what would be your plea to the industry or to people watching?
I think I mentioned it before, but I think embrace change. I think as an industry, we're going to go through so much more change. Technology is going to drive that change. AI is going to drive it. The NHS contract will drive it, and the appetite for private. But I think embrace change and collaborate with each other. You've already said that you've seen it in the dental industry. I think there's more that we can do to collaborate with each other a bit more. Don't be afraid of it, and also reach out. I'm constantly talking to other COOs and CEOs of other groups. What are they doing? What's their plans for this year? Where are they expanding to? And we talk and we share ideas all the time. Like I said, I spoke to a smaller group a few months ago about something that I will introduce to Together Dental, and I will roll it out across the group once I've got the setup right. But I think it'll add real value to our business, but also to the colleagues within our business as well. So embrace change and be collaborative together.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a really great place to end. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on the
Thank
show.
you for having me.
No, it's been really good, really insightful. I think it's really cool to see some of the differences between the different group sizes that happen, and also like between high street and DSO level, but also to see like how you're all working together to make, big changes happen. It's kind of leading me to the segment I always do right at the end, is asking a question to you, the audience. And I think the question for me really is hitting home. What do you think the biggest way that everyone in the dental industry could collaborate? If we were going to collaborate a lot more tomorrow, what would be the biggest thing that we could do to start working better together?